So imagine this for a second. You're walking through a medieval village, and bam, the stench hits you like a freight train. Everyone around you looks like they haven't seen soap in their entire lives. Their teeth are black, they're covered in dirt, and honestly, you're wondering if these people even know what water is. Now, here's the thing. That image that we all have, it's basically Hollywood BS. I know. Hear me out. What if I told you that medieval people were actually obsessed with being clean? Like, more than you might think. We're talking about people who had spa days, brushed their teeth, and would literally judge you if you showed up somewhere dirty. Sounds crazy, right? Well, buckle up, because we're about to completely flip everything you thought you knew about medieval hygiene. And I promise you, some of this stuff is going to absolutely blow your mind. Alright? So first things first. Where the heck did this whole dirty medieval people thing even come from? Well, we can basically thank the Victorians for this mess. Yeah, those fancy 1800s people with their top hats and weird obsession with covering table legs. Because they were too sexy, they loved painting the medieval period as this gross, backwards period to make themselves look super civilized and progressive. They literally called it the Dark Ages, which, by the way, historians today absolutely hate that term. It's like calling your awkward middle school years the disaster ages just to make high school look better. Then Hollywood jumped in and said, you know what? Let's make this even worse. Think about every medieval movie you've ever seen. Game of Thrones, Braveheart. That random Robin Hood movie your dad loves. Everyone looks like they've been rolling around in mud for sport. It's dramatic, sure, but it's also complete garbage, historically speaking. But here's what actually wild medieval people were so into cleanliness that some historians think they were basically like modern-day Japan when it comes to bathing culture. Yeah, you heard that right. Let me paint you a different picture. It's a Tuesday in medieval Europe, and you're heading to the local bathhouse with your friends. Not some gross, primitive mud pit. I'm talking about a legit spa experience. These places were everywhere. Public bathhouses were like the Starbucks of medieval Europe. You could unwalk down a street without running into one. And they weren't just about getting clean either. You could get a massage, have your nails done, get your ears cleaned, grab some food, maybe even get a haircut. It was like a medieval wellness center. Medieval folks treated these like we treat going to a spa today. They'd book time slots, meet up with friends, make it a whole social event. Now, here's where it gets spicy. These bathhouses caused drama because men and women could hang out together. And sometimes, well, let's just say some extra services were available. The church was not happy about this, but people kept going anyway because they loved being clean that much. Even the Vikings, yeah, the supposedly savage, pillaging Vikings were cleaner than most Europeans. They had a whole day of the week dedicated to bathing called Laugardagor, which literally means washing day. Our Saturday comes from this. They were so known for being clean that other Europeans actually commented on how good they smelled. But what about regular people, you're asking? Not everyone could afford fancy spa days. Fair point, but medieval people were way more creative than you'd think. Daily washing wasn't some crazy luxury. It was basic human decency. People washed their hands and faces every single day, and they had wash basins in their homes for this exact purpose. Medieval etiquette books. And yes, they had those because, apparently, even in the 1300s, people needed to be told not to be gross. Constantly reminded people to wash up before meals, after using the bathroom, and before bed. They made their own soap from animal fat and wood ash. And here's the kicker. They de-add herbs like sage and thyme to make it smell amazing. So not only were they washing, they were making sure they smelled good too. When the Crusades brought fancy soap recipes back from the Middle East, it became even more popular. Though daily full-body baths weren't an everyday thing for everyone, a quick wash of the important bits was considered absolutely essential. And get this, they brushed their teeth. Not with modern toothbrushes, obviously, but they used twigs, cloth, and even made tooth powders from herbs and salt. Bad breath was considered super rude socially, so they'd chew on herbs like mint and parsley to keep their breath fresh. Honestly, some medieval people probably had better dental hygiene than half the people I know today. Now, here's where things get a bit complicated, and this is probably where some of the myths come from. There were some ultra-religious people, and I'm talking about the extreme end here, who thought washing was basically showing off and being too worldly. Some saints deliberately avoided bathing as a form of religious suffering. They'd wear the same clothes until they fell apart, refuse to wash, and basically embrace being gross for Jesus. But here's the important part. These people were considered weird by everyone else. This would be like judging all of modern society based on those people who choose to live off the grid in the woods eating only pine cones. Most people thought these religious extremists were kind of nuts. The majority of medieval Christians actually thought cleanliness was godly. They believed that since humans were made in God's image, keeping yourself clean was a way of honoring that. Many monasteries had amazing bathing facilities and actually required monks to bathe regularly. So yeah, there were some smelly saints, but they were definitely not the norm. Let's be real though. Your social class totally affected how clean you could stay, just like everything else in medieval times. Rich people had it made. Private baths, fancy imported soaps, perfumes. Servants to help them get clean, multiple outfits they could change into, basically everything you'd expect. They could afford to hit up the best bathhouses and had all the latest hygiene tech. Middle-class folks. Your merchants, skilled workers, minor nobles. They did pretty well too. Regular bathhouse visits, decent soap, good washing facilities at home. They were definitely staying clean. But what about peasants? Here's where Hollywood gets it most wrong. Even poor people cared about being clean. They just had to be more creative about it. They'd wash in rivers and streams, make simple soap at home, and yes, they changed their clothes. Linen undergarments were huge because they were easier to wash than the heavy outer clothes. Were peasants as squeaky clean as nobles? Obviously not. But they weren't rolling around in filth either. They just worked within their means. Okay, you're thinking, but what about cities? Weren't medieval cities just giant open sewers? Well, Cities definitely had their challenges. When you pack thousands of people together without modern plumbing, things can get pretty gross pretty fast. But medieval people weren't idiots. They had laws about where you could dump waste, public bathrooms, and even early garbage collection systems. Many cities had specific areas for different types of waste, and if you got caught throwing your chamber pot contents out the window, you'd get fined hard. That whole people throwing poop out of windows thing, while it probably happens sometimes, most cities had laws against it. It wasn't just accepted behavior. Cities also had public fountains and wells for washing. And many had drainage systems either inherited from the Romans or built using similar techniques. Were medieval cities as clean as today? Obviously not.